There is
honey, but no bees.
There is honey, but no bees. There can be a good thing left behind, even if the creator of the thing is quiet or has left the stage.
You know, the fact that you don't see bees doesn't mean that some other creature produces the honey. And the bee doesn't even announce it. You don't see bees buzzing around in supermarkets or in places where honey is sold. But you still see the honey.
I think I would relate that to our situation in the country. I mean, if you're put in a position of authority to deliver to the people, just deliver. You don't need to shout. Your work will speak for itself.
It will, won't it?
Yeah, for a very long time, Kibaki didn't say much, but today, you speak of what he did.
You know, the other day I was surprised when someone was talking about gabions. Momonyoko Udongo.
Momonyoko Udongo.
That was the late President Moi led a charge on building gabions to reduce soil erosion right across, all over the country. And those who were children in that particular era remember it because they also participated.
Just gabions and what? Just gabions and something. There are two.
Yes. It is a long time ago, so I am allowed to forget.
You're allowed to forget?
Yes, I'm allowed to forget.
All right. Okay. JSS teachers have been at the front of what we want to look at in terms of a conflict when it comes to education in the country. Whether they were going to be high school teachers or whether they were going to remain primary school teachers has always just been the back and forth that has been the case, right? The employment process involves verifying documents and posting teachers, particularly those from primary schools to JSS. Now, remember, junior secondary school then takes care of grades 7, 8, and 9, and then you go into senior secondary school, which is 10, 11, and 12. Now, in terms of the hiring of those teachers, it was required because remember, what we're saying is that essentially primary school stops at grade 6, and then you get into secondary school, grade 7, 8, and 9. Now, in that transition, primary schools then took over junior secondary school. In other words, junior secondary school was going to be domiciled in primary schools. So then the whole hullabaloo came in. So what does that mean? Who's going to teach them? Because remember, primary school teachers who even have their own union don't teach secondary school.
Yes.
Okay? And if you're going to domicile a junior secondary school, whether it's junior or senior, it's still what? It's still secondary school. So if you have primary school teachers in a primary school and you're going to domicile high school in a primary school, the question becomes, who is going to teach them? Will you then bring JSS teachers into primary school? And how are we going to cut through that divide? So there's been a lot of hullabaloo around the whole, question and who's going to hire them and what then will they be entitled to? Will you make them permanent and pensionable along those lines? They're pushing for their own union now because it's clear that where they sit is very different from where everybody else sits. Primary school teachers, good. Post-primary school teachers, that's very clear. And now we're saying that JSS, we're straddling between primary and secondary. Where exactly do we lie? So they're saying, you know what? First of all, give us our own union because all these things you people are doing, it doesn't help us in any way. And they're also saying that, we're trying to delink from primary school heads because they're essentially telling us what to do. Senior school heads are just not even regarding us because where exactly are we? There are many issues that are surrounding this whole JSS debacle, and we want to look into some of those issues this morning. And just as we get into that, we're going to talk with Edwin Osoro. He is the interim chair of the JSS National Forum, and he joins us on phone this morning. Good morning, Bwana Osoro.
Yes, thank you, madam.
How are you doing?
I'm great. What about you?
We're doing all right, and thank you very much for asking. We wanted to just get into this with you this morning. There seem to be so many issues that we have been going over and over again. We want to get from you to help us understand, beyond what I've been able to say this morning, what the issues are and what we're looking for towards being able to resolve them.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to share with you on what is happening in our education sector at the moment. As we are aware that we are in a paradigm shift and we have a lot of changes that are being seen today under the CBC dispensation. First of all, as well, we are aware that JSS has been domiciled in the primary section, where we have graduates who are domiciled in the primary to teach or to educate learners on those sections of junior school. And what we are experiencing at the moment, we have several challenges. For instance, for the teachers of who are handling JSS, we as a leadership, we have been in conversation with CUPET so that we can also have our teachers in the same union, because JSS teachers are post-primary teachers, and to that extent, we need to have a voice of representation based on the fact that we have already made an attempt to form our own union, but it was responded negatively by the soft trade unions, which made an order to reject the union that was supposed to be articulating the voice of the JSS teachers. But as we speak, we have several challenges, starting from what we normally call the CBG, or the career progression of the JSS teachers. As we all remember, we are in the primary setup, and there is no clear career progression guidelines of these teachers. But we are focusing much on that. We also have challenges of sports. These activities, you find that JSS teachers prepare learners, but eventually you find that our primary counterparts in the JSS, who we share the environment, they have already occupied all the slots of representation of the co-curricular activities. So we have many challenges, but we are speculating that in the coming days we are going to meet with the Cabinet Secretary for Education to share a table and, of course, enlist some of the challenges that we wish that the government might have to intervene before the situation gets out of hand.
Bonosoro, so JSS teachers have been teachers before. JSS teachers, then we started to see with the progression of the CBC curriculum that then it was clear that JSS teachers were needed. Where were they before?
That's a challenge from the government. You know, when there was the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms, there are professors who gave out some input towards the implementation of JSS and the entire CBC curriculum. Remember, in the last administration, they had an intention to have JSS domiciled in senior school, but that did not materialize. Remembering that we also had the issues of politics, and now the coming up of the new administration and the Kenya Kwanza leadership under President William Ruto. He appointed the Presidential Working Party that gave these measures that JSS will be domiciled in primary section. And I think the Working Party did not consider the views of the teachers and the views of the educationists who were to give the substantive information, and they didn't have that in mind when they were considering that. But that is said and done. What we are supposed to do, there is nothing cannot be able to be adjusted because it has already happened. But there is a lot which is yet to be done by the government, more specifically the Teacher Service Commission, and of course the Minister of Education, which is in charge of making policies so that we can have maybe at the moment where we are, what we can maybe request is that we need to have a divergent opinion on so that we can also see our autonomy of JSS administration. We want to see maybe substantive deputies appointed from the senior school who have competence to be able to lead those schools that we are currently headed by head teachers, of course.
Mr. Soro, there's something I'd like to understand. Are you saying that the Working Party did not consult with the teachers?
Yes, they didn't consult with the teachers substantively, because if there is no career, even the CPG, what we normally call the career progression of JSS teachers. Remember the first cohort, which was taken in the year 2023, as permanent and pensionable. There were 9,000 teachers who were taken as permanent and pensionable. And up to date, next year, as we are aware that next year, 3 years, they are going to C3. You know, you normally start as at the level of C2 when you are appointed substantively as a permanent and pensionable secondary school teacher. And that is where JSS teachers belong. And now next year, they are going to C3. And there is no clear career progression guidelines on that matter. So that is also a gap which was not addressed by the Presidential Working Party, not even the Ministry and the Teacher Service Commission, respectively.
What I'm asking is this: as teachers, from where you sit, who then did they consult? Because I would have assumed that if you are seeking opinions that relate to students and the process of teaching them with the new system, then the teachers are the ones who have been consulted. Who did they consult?
You know, this Presidential Working Party, majority of them, what we saw they were doing, it is actually a group of professors seated in Nairobi in halls, and they were not really engaging the right personnel who have the experience and who have that guidance. I think even the unions have voiced this before, but it has not yet materialized because they have not yet been able to capture what are serious gaps that we are addressing.
So, Osoro, you've mentioned the fact that you tried to register your own union, but the registrar responded not in a good way. What were some of the reasons that the registrar gave you as to why the union would not be formed, as well as we talk about the JSS teachers and where they would be domiciled? What is the feeling the teachers have with regard to where they should be, whether it's primary or high school?
At the moment, our teachers, what we have already experienced, the union we have tried to register, and the registrar responded, of course, negatively by saying that we have already existing unions which can be able to address the JSS challenges. But notwithstanding and not putting into consideration that these are secondary school teachers who have been domiciled in the primary section, we are in a paradigm shift. We understand that. But that group is not substantively represented. But that said and done, and we have consulted and we have agreed, of course, KUPPET has already done some amendment to have JSS teachers represented in the the KUPPET union, which is in charge of taking care of post-primary school teachers. And of course, they have allowed us, of course, we did a renegotiation with them a couple of weeks ago, and they have agreed that any JSS teacher is free to, of course, fight for any position, irrespective of the fact that he has 13 weeks of membership in the union. That is a translation of 3 months, and we feel that it is a relief, yes, but we are still consulting, and members are now coming on board, and already KUPPET has started deducting the union dues of our members. And we are going forward. We are already started engaging them so that we can have all teachers in the union.
Okay, so Osoro, something that we just need to also clarify. From what you're saying, it would appear as though there's this gap that had been created. It's been filled with now JSS teachers, but we also have heard reports, and I'd like you to confirm or deny the same, whereby so a JSS teacher comes to a school and maybe they're, where they teach is history, for example, but then they're given other subjects or teach whatever it is that you can essentially fill the gaps. Has there been that kind of practice whereby JSS teachers are basically thrown into the deep and then you find your way? If you're a teacher of mathematics, find yourself teaching history, science, other things. Do those things actually happen?
Yes, I can confirm those things happen. But what I can say, this is our country, of course. We are educationists. We are trying to figure it out, but the best option that it was supposed to be, the CBC curriculum was supposed to be implemented in the senior school, where we have a lot of teachers. For example, mathematics, we have departments, as opposed to junior schools, where you find that the workforce still, we need more teachers Of course, the government has done a good deal. Of course, they employed it at 5,000 plus 9,000, so that is a good number. But there is much to be done from the government. We need more teachers. At least at this level, we have at least a fairly representation of the teaching personnel, but the government has a lot to do because we need more teachers so that we can now be able to address the subject or the learning areas which normally require the expertise. For example, when you find a teacher who is, of course, maybe teaching history and government, now that you want to give him to teach mathematics, I think that is an exercise in futility. And based on the fact that we are supposed to nurture every learner's potential, I think that is going to be catastrophic, and it will not be augur well with those teachers who may be infusing knowledge and skills and attitudes to those learners in that perspective.
Paint a picture for us, Bonosoro. The current situation that we have, what does it mean there for students who are going to be going on to the next level? What does it mean?
So for the learners who are, for example, in grade, in junior school, we have the learners are supposed to be taught for 3 years. That is grade 7, grade 8, then grade 9, after which these learners are going to proceed to senior school for grade 10, 11, and 12 for also another 3 years. So we are expecting, we are waiting for more guidance on how we are going to do it about we have 3 pathways: social sciences, we have the sports, and the STEM, of course, what we normally call the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So those are the 3 pathways that we have, and we have not yet received the guidance on how we are going. Remember, we have national schools, we have extra county schools, and national schools, of course, and sub-county schools. We are waiting to see more changes or guidance from the government on how we are going to be able to, of course, transit these learners from junior school to senior school, of course, going to 2026.
It's important. These are grade 9ers that we're talking about now, and they essentially have to make that decision. And we're getting into term 2 in the next 2 weeks or so. And during term 2, in addition to the coursework that they have to do, they then have to make a selection into the pathways that you speak of that they will go into when they go into grade 10 in January next year. Now, what kind of support is being offered to these students from this? Because we still remember that the JSS teachers are the ones who've handled them from grade 7. This particular class has had some bumps, haven't they? They have dealt with going into grade 7 where it was really not sure what was going on. Teachers themselves, just as you've admitted, were, up and down. There was a bit of confusion. They didn't have books until maybe the 3rd term of that year. We get into grade 8 when, we're still starting to settle down. And then we get into grade 9, which is another transition year in the curriculum. And now they have to select pathways. What kind of support is being offered to these students, even with the issues that you speak about, where teachers are having to suffer from Bonosoro? It just seems that there's a lot to have to handle. How is this actually working out?
Maybe what I can say, the government, basically the Ministry of Education, assisted by the Teacher Service Commission, they have a lot to do in guiding the entire process because they are policy makers and implementers, of course. We are yet to get the further instructions from the government as a whole, the Ministry of Education, the Teacher Service Commission. We are yet to find more progressive guidance on how we are going to execute this entire new curriculum. Of course, we understand there are challenges, yes. We are human beings, we are teachers, we understand that, but we need to do these things in advance so that we can be able to see the grade 9, because these are trains that have left the station and there is no turning backwards. So it is all about that the government needs to do this in advance, because we are only left. Remember, we are going to, the learners are going to sit for KGCEA, that is the Kenya Junior School Education Assessment, which is going to allow them to transit to senior school come next year. So the government itself, it needs also to guide these learners, because this is a new curriculum. which has the three pathways, and we have said the STEM, the social sciences, the sports, and of course there was also another challenge that I was almost forgetting, that find that some of the learners were blocked from participating in co-curricular activities in junior school across the country, based on the fact that they were saying that they are of age that they cannot participate. And we ask ourselves as leaders that what is the essence of now inculcating these skills? CPC is anchored on a competence-based curricula. That is how we should be able to infuse the core competencies. And I believe that if someone is not good in class and is good in maybe in sports, that is the area that they need to be nurtured, of course. But you find the government giving confusing policies when they block those JSS learners. It is something which is disheartening. We felt that our learners must always be given a chance and an opportunity, of course, to showcase their talents and skills in the sports without blocking them. So that is another challenge that we are experiencing, that we feel that the ministry and the Teacher Service Commission should address, so that to give these learners also a platform to showcase what they are able to do.
So let me just ask, in terms of, we will talk about in terms of having enough teachers, we talk about the facilities, but let's talk about the infrastructure around, in terms of making sure that these students are able to get the very best out of these new curricula, because we talk about the presence of laboratories. Are there, you as teachers, are you able to give these children the very best that they need for them to get a maximum reward from this CBC system?
Oh, right. What I can say on the issues of infrastructure, the primary institutions where JSS has been domiciled, we want to applaud the government that indeed they have constructed almost 14,000 classrooms across the country. And the classrooms, majority of them have been completed, and some of them are yet to be completed. Of course, maybe the opening of second term, they will be complete and they'll be ready for usage. And the CBC grade 9 class that we are currently handling. But on the issue of laboratories, we are sorry to say, remember we have the STEM pathway, which is supposed to be doing practicals in laboratories, and our primary schools, they don't have. If some have, there are those schools maybe which are close to town, but majority of our schools, they don't have labs. And I think it is a wake-up call to the government. If they have decided to make it to domicile, yes, the primary institutions, it is now their mandate to facilitate funding so that we can see, of course, building of laboratories to support the science and related courses in junior school.
Absolutely. And I mean, just some of the issues that we continue to need to shed light on and to continue to highlight, hoping that, they will get to a point where they will be sorted out. We don't have time. The clock is ticking. But we want to thank you for sharing these insights with us this morning. Edwin Osoro, Interim Chair of the JSS, which is Junior Secondary School National Forum. Thank you for sharing those insights with us this morning.
Thank you, Special Farm.
And even as we continue with conversations, we're going to take a break at this point. It is 29 minutes to 8 o'clock. Just looking at some of those challenges that we do face. Time is going by, even as we deal with issues on a daily basis. There are fundamentals which need to be handled. We're going to come back and continue with this conversation on Kenya's biggest conversation at 29 to 8. Overlook the importance that they play in this particular section, and it's important that they have everything that they need, but we're in a spot where they don't have everything that they need by their own admission. We don't have enough labs. We don't have any labs in some schools, and we've said that these students need to be prepared for a pathway into a specific course. We don't have what they need at the fundamental level. Yes. We don't have teachers who are trained, number one, to be able to take them through those courses. These teachers are in limbo. They don't know where they are. Are we secondary school teachers? Are we primary school teachers? What are we? Where do we go? Can we form our own union? And the call seems to be the same thing. That can we get to the place where the policy formers and the leaders will actually give us direction. We were told that 10,000 classrooms would be completed by December, and then we ask ourselves the question, okay, well, what about the ones that were left? We got some insights into that, well, you know what, fine, they're classrooms, but do you know that people still continue to admit students in Form 2, 3, and 4 in the middle of the year? So you think there's space? There's really no space. December was 4 months ago, and that was when these 10,000 classes were supposed to be completed. Term 2 of this year, 2025, is coming to us very quickly. And in 6 short months, these grade 9ers, about 800,000 of them, will go to grade 10. Are we ready? And why do we always have to ask ourselves the question, are we ready? Getting to this point, and what are we going to do? Remember, first time in Kenya's history that we're going towards pathways, and the students who essentially are getting into these pathways seem to be getting in unprepared. Why do we continue to find ourselves in a situation where we are unprepared?
You know, if one focuses on the things that are not working right in the country, one will get depressed, because there are many. But the abiding question is, could these situations have been avoided? Because if they were avoided, then the discussion would be completely different. We have students who are graduating after high school.
Yes.
Some graduated last year. With this new system, they'll be graduating as well. And the numbers of students who graduate in our schools, those who leave primary school or junior school, and those who will now leave senior school, they are in the regions of 1 million. Now, what I'm interested in looking into the future is when we think of these numbers, and every year the number isn't constant, it actually increases.
Yes, it does.
We look at the spaces that we have in our institutions of higher learning, and at best, 1/5 of these students, at best, will be accommodated, at best. What then do we do with the others? What happens to them? Are we currently experiencing the ripple effect of a large population of very young people who have left some form of education? And I haven't spoken of those who've graduated from some of these tertiary institutions where they've gone for some training or the other, or the university. What do we do with all these young people? What plans do we have? Because each and every of these students, and remember, with every year, the number is compounded.
Yes.
If these students, if these citizens are idle and they have no hope, what do we think we will see?
It's interesting when you talk about JSS. If you look at the goal for it is to nurture holistic development, critical thinking, and talent-based learning under the CBC framework. Now, when you just look at holistic development, let's look at what the curriculum offers them. You know, we talk about JSS being domiciled in primary school, but part of the holistic development is making sure that we have the labs so that those who are deep in STEM get in there. But as we've been told by Edwin, these labs do not exist. That means from the very foundational process, we are interfering with that holistic development and giving them a curriculum that will give them the aspirations that they want. Now, we also have a history of the transition. Someone always drops at some point. What are some of the safety nets, and how is the government trying to bridge these gaps? You know, because if we don't get it from the foundational point where someone is getting into, say, I want to be a plumber, that has been made very well in my foundational basics. If I drop out, I can go to a TVET and do that. But if the foundation is destroyed, how do you move forward? You know, City.
This is the thing, and I think sometimes we try to couch it and make it sound pretty, but the truth of the matter is that there are no safety nets. That we are, you know what it is that we're in a plane and the thing is crashing, and we're just telling people, you know what, jump out before the thing crashes. You're safer jumping out, and maybe you have a few injuries than you are if you stayed in the plane and the thing crashed and you all died. And that's what we're doing. We are playing Russian roulette with our children and their education. That we say, okay, well, you know what? This is where we want to go. And it's clear that this is the road to get there. But for some reason, for some really weird reason, we decide to go left and then find our way through the jungle and then maybe come out on the other end. And then we say, well, at least we made it. Well, I'm saying we can't do that.
You know why?
The education of a child. You know that you want somebody to select pathways.
Yeah.
You know that you want to have somebody in STEM, which is science, technology, mathematics. You want that. But then you don't have the ingredients for them to do that. In my opinion, my father always used to say, if you're going to start something, you might as well start it right. If you're not going to do it right from the very beginning, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Stay with what you have and then just move on with that. Do the best that you can.
Yeah.
You know that you want people to go into the humanities and you want them to go into the arts. Do we have enough in terms of facilities to make sure? We don't even have enough science teachers, for crying out loud. We have a 67 to 33% ratio, 33% being the number of science teachers that we have in the country. But we want that out of the 1 million students who will go into grade 10. And if you want to say, even if you say a quarter of them, 250,000 students will go into STEM. And we don't have enough teachers. I don't even think we need to romanticize it or make it sound sexy. We just don't have the fundamentals that we need. So the work that should be happening right now, the business of the Ministry of Education today, the business of teachers, the business of policymakers, the business of curriculum designers and implementers should be, what can we do today to ensure that this thing which we have prescribed can actually work? If you're not doing that, you might as well be sitting on the side of the beach sipping a pina colada, because what are we doing? What are we doing? Because we are saying that we want to go in this direction, but you don't have the tools that you need to do that. You're going to come at the end of it, you would have lost your shirt and a shoe, but then we'll say, well, at least we've done it. And some of the things that CT say, what safety, and even what safety nets. People tell us today that for those students who cannot make it to university, let's put them in TVETs. And I'm saying no. TVETs actually on their own are a qualifying kind of institution for a lot of people. We have people who have specialized in certain things, and they can go through a TVET and come out on the other end of it, either start a business or do a job. If we don't have the fundamental ingredients to do something, my plea continues to be, then why do we begin?
I think, no, you see, this new curriculum, has been said, was meant to change how we do business. Fine. Okay, good. We agree. But how do you start something without even taking it through a piloting process? Because that seems to be the order of business in this country, because you've not taken it through these tests that are needed to see what works, what you need to fix before you actually deploy it. Because today we're here, we're trying to play catch up, yet from the very word go, we got it all wrong. Because we took this idea and we shoved it down parents' throats and that it has to be implemented. Yet you've not agreed on where even these institutions should be domiciled, whether it's primary or high school. You've not even decided on matters to do with the laboratories. Do we have them? What happens to those in STEM? We've just been told by Edwin that there are those who want to play sport, who want to be greatest athletes in this country, but they do not even have a field where they can run or play football, because already primary schools have taken those spaces, and those who are in JSS do not have anything to do, which begs the question, when it comes to the implementation, the policymakers, those who are here, why don't they just sit down and start looking at how best to do the best practices that should be applied, City?
You know how misdeeds catch up with us? Very many of these public schools that we have in the country had sufficient acreage for development and for growth. But over time, right from independence, all these pieces of land where you found government installations, whether they were schools, whether it was the prison, whether it was the military, it was government land. There were no individual titles that indicated that this land belongs to the armed forces, this belongs to the army, this belongs to the air force. We didn't have that. So many people took advantage of this. And in so doing, they carved off pieces of land that belonged to schools.
It still happens today. My primary school was the land was being taken the other day. Kimalel Primary School in Eldoret. This year, 2025.
Right. So there are people who believe that the only way you get rich is to get government land allocated to you and then you sell it. And that's supposed to be a business venture. Anyway, that problem is catching up with us now because schools don't have spaces to expand. We have public areas that were designated as public areas, playgrounds, designated.
Yes.
Those were taken. They were specific targeted land, not just for public areas, but for facilities that were envisioned would cater the needs of people whose population was also estimated over time. That land over time was also taken. Now we have a genuine problem on our hands. We have this new system, and even to put up the schools or the classrooms that we require, you need land. And that land doesn't exist because not that it didn't exist. That land was taken. The spirit of impunity that we see in this country is something that cannot be spoken of lightly because its consequences are dire. And dire in the sense that they're generational problems. It has started at a certain point in time, but it proceeds to affect others much, much later into life, and it continues. The process of annexing government land, what we in Kenya call land grabbing, became the norm. And yet, in an earlier time, land could be allocated to you for development. We had a low population, and the government needed to have the land which it had at its disposal developed. So land was actually allocated to people.
Yeah.
That period ended, and the populations made sure that that was going to end. We are in an era where the reality is we have needs for our children. My focus on the children, young people, with their schooling. The bulk of the students who learn in this country are still in public schools.
Yes.
And they also happen to be the most disadvantaged. Okay? How do we ensure that just like students in a past generation who got the benefits of a good education with minimum interference, how do we ensure that this generation of school-going children also have it good? Because by everything that I can see, this JSS system is going to serve them with the short end of the stick.
It is.
It
already is. It already is serving them the short end of the stick. That unfortunately, I think about this thing and I say to myself, we've talked about it's like we're almost, blue in the face that we spoke about this thing. But if we don't continue to speak about it, you know what happens? This thing, it goes under the table, the water washes, it's under the bridge, it's gone. And then we have millions, every year, at least 1 million children who come out of this system with the short end of the stick. What happens to these children? They go into young adulthood, they go into the universities, they go into the TVETs, they come out on the other end of it with the short end of the stick, because this is something that happens in perpetuity. You will continue with that as you keep going. If you come out of high school, of secondary school now, having been given the bare minimum, what do you think you're going in with? You're still going into the next level with the bare minimum. And that's why we need to continue calling out these things when we see them, when we hear them, for us to say that, you know what, guys, we can do better. Nobody's saying that you go from doing mediocre to best tomorrow, but that you can do better every day. Yes. It is fantastic to make plans. You can't succeed without making plans. However, you must have the ingredients to make sure that those plans are implemented. We cannot continue to do this thing whereby you start from the end and then work your way to the beginning. No. From where you are, can we make gradual steps towards this place where you say you want to go? Nobody faults a curriculum. I'm sure there are very many benefits and merits of a curriculum. But for you to get there, to optimize, for it to be efficient, what are those things that you're actually doing to ensure that it happens? The responsibility lies on the shoulders of a Ministry of Education. It does. But in terms of then all of us coming in together to say, that means that when we see something that's going off, we must speak about it. We must talk about it. We must insist that it is done and it is done right. Getting off the pulpit There are some of the things that are actually that are quite fundamental. That if the things that it's always interesting because you find a story. There's a lady who's cooking some of the things that you like to watch, CT, and she was cooking this beef thing, and she was going to use wine as part of the ingredients. And she said, you know what? For this beef stew to come out in its best form, and I'm putting in wine, I'm not going to just use the cheap wine that's going to do. I have to use the best ingredient for the best result.
Yes.
So essentially, she's saying she's not going to use plonk.
Bas.
No.
You have to put in the best ingredient if you want to get the best result.
Yes, you must.
And education is fundamental. That is why it's in the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
It is in the Bill of Rights. Why did they choose that? Why did they not say these other things that we do? Why do we not say that when we say that when we say that people have a right to life, people have a right to protection of livelihoods, people have a right to education? Why doesn't it say people have a right to proper roads? Why doesn't it say that people have a right to walk in the street and breathe air? Why does it insist on education and done right? Why does it insist on it and done right? Because it's fundamental. What you take from the very beginning is going to take you through the rest of your life.
Yeah.
We saw a building in Mombasa being brought down.
Yeah.
Why was it brought down? Because something at the very beginning was
Wasn't
not done right. And we want to put people into society tomorrow where we've given them a foundation that is shaky at best.
Yes.
What do we expect that the result is going to be? What do we expect? So when we sit here and we complain about it, or we talk about it, or we insist on it, and people say, come on, you're making too much noise. Really? What is going to happen? These children in grade 9 are 15 years old.
Yeah.
They've got 3 years left in their formative education. By the time they get to university, guess what? They are formed.
Yes.
With mediocre, with maybe systems working. Like, I really feel bad for these grade 9s. Because from grade 3, they've been the guinea pigs.
Yes.
I feel bad for them because then they got to grade 7, which were coming off a transition year. They didn't have books for 6 months.
Yeah.
They got into term 3 and they're already finishing the shortest term of the year. And then we expect magic out of them. Right? We expect some kind of magic. It is not possible. If we don't get the fundamentals right, we will have a problem in the future. And if we can't see that, then I cry. I do.
And I think some of the issues that we call upon the duty bearers, things that they have to handle, include matters to do with equity issues. And why am I talking about equity issues? Because you find that schools that are in low income areas tend to also receive the short end of the stick. Perhaps it's about time that is equally looked into to ensure that all students in this republic get the right education and the right resources to make sure that they compete on the same level. We also have issues to do with policy adjustments. The Minister of Education needs to come out clear on the policies around education, JSS, CBC, in ensuring that they are implemented to the core. We talk about teacher training. It is a continuous process. Perhaps they put more funds and resources in making sure that the teachers are well equipped, the teachers are well trained, so that they get to teach our children very well. And also we have matters to do with assessment and reforms. Reforms are needed. We are not doing right with regard to where we are with JSS. Reforms are things that must be put in place to ensure that the education of our children is nothing but the best. As we say, put in the best ingredients and you have the best student, the best Kenyan that is coming to serve this republic.
You know, the thing that most people fail to understand is that the memories we have form the narratives of our life. If you went through a harrowing experience, especially in your youth, or that thing will follow you for the rest of your life, unless you understand the influence it has on the decisions you make and you actually attend to it or seek help to help attend to it. Countries that have been at war and children have been used as soldiers. Or books have been written about this, the impact that has. And these children inevitably grow up to be adults.
Yes, they do.
What sort of adults do you think they are?
There you go. That's it.
Yeah.
What sort of adults do you think they will be? Because that's what we're doing. If the care that is needed to nurture the minds of these young Kenyans isn't given the utmost time and the opportunity for them to actually grow is denied them, then again I have to ask, we keep talking of monies that are inadequate.
Yes.
There's an entire discipline that deals with scarcity. It's called economics. And it labels and understands how then choices become a very key partner in ensuring that resources are divvied up to meet needs. The question that I ask is this. The biggest item in our budget is education.
Education,
It is.
yes.
Can we actually document and justify that entire money is actually used as it should be used? Can we? Because if we can, why do we have all manner of pending things? Universities have their issues.
Why do we have gaps?
Gaps.
Can't
There are
hire
gaps
teachers,
everywhere.
can't
There are
finish
gaps
capitation,
everywhere.
Reputation.
Yes.
can't build schools, don't
Yes,
have
yes.
labs. Come on.
That money is a heck of a lot of money. If you itemize it and look at what it can do vis-a-vis the number of education institutions we have in the country, it is still a lot of money. Can we? Until we can do that and say, each and every to the last cent was used towards this, then the issue of inadequate resources will make sense to me. But before then, it does not make sense.
City, we have majority of children who go to school in this country going to public schools.
Yes.
That means the government has to ensure that the majority of those who go to school get nothing but the very best. We cannot continue sitting and saying we are still trying to fix it. We have to do it right from the word go, because time is not waiting for us.
Dennis, the tragedy that I've been speaking of, as I've been looking at the proverbs from Zimbabwe, we have similar tragedies. Man, do we have a wealth of human resource? We do.
We do.
It is that wealth of human resource that enables a country to move forward, because you don't have a shortage of people who can think up ways of ensuring you move forward. We keep talking of documents gathering dust in whichever ministry that comprises of the way forward movements that Kenyans have come up with. If we can export labor, it means we have labor that can be exported,
Yes.
especially if it's trained labor.
Right.
But should we not meet our own needs first?
True.
Should we not meet our own needs first? Because it is the resources of this country that have trained those people. Should the people of the country also not benefit as they should? Just have sufficient teachers to meet the needs. Simple, in my mind. Simple. And yet, someone will say the monies allocated are insufficient. Again, those colossal amounts, you're telling me they're insufficient. How exactly?
Show us how you spent it so far.
Yes. What is done with
Yes.
just itemize it. Let's not even go into history. Just look at last year. What was allocated?
638 billion.
Exactly. Just how this was utilized.
What did it actually do?
You know that amount of money?
400 million shy of a trillion.
Yes. What did it do? And how can somebody demonstrate that it was insufficient to meet the needs that we've been talking about this morning? How?
Until we start to take it seriously, we're not going to be able to see the results. And I believe there are some people who take it seriously, but if everybody doesn't at the same pace, or even some exceeding others, we're going to continue to see these problems that we see. But it would be disingenuous of anyone to think that those who essentially are building a future on the shoulders of children who go to school and are not doing it right, to think that something perfect will come out of it. We got to get our ducks in a row, and then beyond getting them in a row, you have to get them walking. Some of the conversations that we have every day on the Situation Room, it continues. Good morning, 8 a.m.